I never buy my husband's aftershave, but during Boots days, is this too macho?
If your kid goes through diapers the way my kid goes through diapers, then a Boots day can really...
If you can only get to one sale this year, get to Boots Days.
You're better off at Boots. BCTV, we're giving it all we got.
Good morning. This is a tale of two stories. What the Liberals say in private and what the Liberals say in public. And of course what they say about their disastrous showing in the polls. I just can't help laughing. 23 skidoo. They don't have to have an election, but if they did, they'd be out neck and crop totally tomorrow. And here is a man who's going to tell us the tale of the two stories and exhibit that unutterable liberal confidence that even with 23 in the polls they can win an election, is Donald Johnston, confidant of Prime Minister Trudeau, a hopeful for the leadership in due course, who knows about the rocky road to 1990, and who, apart from being Economic Development Minister, I think prouder of his role as Science and Technologies Minister. But some of the predictions he makes on that will make you turn your hair grayer. Donald Johnston after the break. I have in my hand Don Johnston, Minister of Economic Development, in this particular aspect, a confidential document which may well have come from a cabinet discussion, which describes the rocky road to 1990 for Canadians as nothing short of disastrous. That technology will wipe out a quarter to one half of the 1981 jobs which could be lost in 1991 by manufacturing, widespread social problems, alcoholism, vandalism, crime and family breakups, severe world recession or depression. That's what that report says. Correct, Mr. Johnston?
Oh, it says a lot more than that.
It's much worse than that.
Oh, no, it says a lot more than that.
But on the bad side, am I accurate in what is predicted for the technological future of Canada?
First of all, Jack, you know, we don't comment on leaked documents. But that being said, let me say that the document says a great deal more than what you're making reference to. The document is a document of challenge. It's saying, look, we have some major challenges ahead of us as a society. There are going to be jobs lost in the manufacturing sector. That's one of the things it says.
Right.
I don't think you're going to tell me that that's a bad thing. To get people off some of those assembly lines, get them out of some of the very difficult jobs where there are occupational hazards. It's like that cartoon you may have seen with the galley slaves looking at each other and saying, have you heard about the sale? It's going to put us out of work. I mean, there are a lot of jobs that could be better done by robots. There will be jobs lost in the manufacturing sector.
Right now in British Columbia, people would be glad of jobs as galley slaves if it took them off welfare and gave them a sense of pride and independence.
Yes, but the point is that as technology moves through the system, there are going to be jobs lost in manufacturing, as there have been for the last 20 years. They may go down to 10% of total employment, maybe to 5%, and there will be jobs created in the service sectors with all the other new technologies that are coming on stream.
I know, but give me the extent of your problem, not from the secret document. We're going to lose 2 million jobs by 1990.
Well, losing jobs that disappear as opposed to jobs that appear? That's not a net figure, that's a gross figure that's referred to there. In agriculture, we lost 500,000 jobs in a space of a few years after the war, through automation, through putting automatic milking machines in dairy farms, through tractors. Now, were those jobs lost? I don't think they were lost. We have a more productive agricultural sector than we've ever had, with something like 3% of the workforce instead of 25% of the workforce.
But
that's the kind of thing we're talking about.
But what you're telling me that in order to keep employment to less than, say, 12 or 14%, you've got to add 2 million jobs in the next 10 years.
We're
adding jobs.
We're adding jobs every day. We've added 328,000 jobs net in the last year.
These figures don't mean anything to anybody when you've got 14% unemployment in British Columbia, when we've got industries closing down like mad, when we've got industrial instability, and the government in Ottawa in which the public has lost confidence.
Well, don't interpret what I'm saying as not being concerned about the unemployment levels or about the impact of these technologies on the workplace. My point is that there are two sides to the coin. There's not only the side that you're looking at, saying jobs lost. There's increased productivity, there's increased wealth, there are new jobs. There are jobs in areas that we can't even dream of today, like video games.
Oh, I can understand.
All sorts of things
I can understand
that,
but I do want to demonstrate that when you get your basic material in these confidential reports, they are bluntly and brutally honest.
Well, bluntly and brutally honest, everything we say is bluntly and brutally honest. The same statements have been made in public. There's nothing in that report that's not part of the conventional wisdom of the marketplace today.
True, but it's not normal for why the hell isn't this a public document then instead of a confidential one?
It appears to me that it's assuming the dimensions of a public document.
But when I look at your glossy, glitzy brochures, I see that we stand on the forefront of a new era. An exciting future will be shaped by the technological advances of today.
And you agree with that, I'm sure.
No, I don't.
You don't call that blunt? I mean, that's true. We are on the threshold of a new era. There are major structural changes. We're moving into the information society. Look at books like Megatrends by John Nesbitt and so on. I don't think there's ever been a period in the history of mankind that's more exciting in terms of future potential. So many breakthroughs. Just the other day, you may have seen that study on cancer research. They think it'll be beaten by the end of the century. Heart disease, all these things that we're doing with new technologies.
That's providing.
How can you not help but be excited?
Oh, agreed entirely, but that's providing our system of free enterprise, mixed nationalism of our particular economic system can survive in the meantime, and that we don't break down. For instance, you say here,
survive?
The world pressure for increased protectionism could lead to a severe world recession.
That's a good warning. We got to make sure that we beat protectionism wherever we see it.
And how are we going to beat the rest of the world in technology when we've already lost the market to the Japanese and others?
Now, just a minute. We've lost part of the market to the Japanese and others, and we're playing a little catch-up in certain areas, but we're not doing badly in other areas either. There's not a country in the world that's as advanced as Canada in telecommunications, in data transmission, in voice transmission, in technologies such as fiber optics, which is one of the technologies of the future, biotechnology, where we're making a major thrust. Even here in British Columbia, we've got some state-of-the-art technologies. And I say even here, it's because you usually think of the heartland of Ontario. But BC has got many exciting technological
Oh, I know we have.
ventures
Very small, very important, and they're really jobs for kind of low-paid slaves, a lot of these technological advances.
You mean people that work in software development and technicians on robots are more paid slaves than people who work on assembly lines?
I think they're probably just about the same. Just about the same. But
well, I suppose that's a question of relativity. They're higher paid jobs. They require more skills. They require more training. So I wouldn't, I think, agree with your analysis that
well, obviously you must have some radical approaches to the unemployment future for Canadians. What are the radical approaches in terms that I can understand?
Well, when you talk about radical approaches, the government has made a major thrust on direct job creation to try and tie people through this difficult period. The Lalonde budget of last April introduced $4.8 billion of stimulus directed largely to the private sector, but also, you may recall, a $2.4 billion program, which I have responsibility for, in terms of putting into place basic infrastructure, research institutes, such as the Pulp and Paper Institute that was put in here in BC, right across the country. Things that are going to create jobs in the future for Canadians, things that will support private sector initiatives. That's where the jobs are going to come from.
But I keep thinking about nasty things like the disastrous failure with Maitland, the partial success with Chrysler, the disastrous
what about the partial success of Chrysler? Explain that to me.
Well, they're paying back some of the loans they got.
Well, I know. I'd say that you see, you like to qualify it as a partial success. I think Chrysler's a great success.
Well, I'm trying to give you credit for it.
Good. Well, let's not use
because
partial.
I can't
One
give
is
you
disaster, the other is partial.
I can't give you credit for your $1.4 billion into Canada, can I?
Well, let's go back to Maitland.
I mean, that's a disaster.
Let's go back to Maitland and Chrysler, which is the subject that we were on a moment ago.
Maitland's a disaster.
Well, if you say the disaster situation of Maitland, you've got to say the outstanding situation of Chrysler. I just want to make sure
what
that
about
the right adjectives in
What
this
about
context.
Canadair?
Well, Canadair was, of course...
Planes can't even fly properly, it would seem.
The planes fly magnificently. It's one of the finest executive jets in the world. There's no question about that.
Just doesn't
you haven't had the opportunity, obviously, of traveling on one.
No.
You'd never make that
I don't know
comment.
that I would go on it.
Well, I can assure you that you would be one of a small minority, because everybody that's traveled in that aircraft is completely enraptured with its performance.
Yeah. Do you use these for government jets?
There are several in the government fleet.
Not when they talk about government travel and government jets. It upsets me too.
Prime Minister travels on it.
Oh, he's entitled. Don Johnston, at the bottom of the heap, 23% in the poll. Even you would be defeated tomorrow.
Well, there's no election tomorrow.
Boy,
Jack.
are you lucky. After the break. Well, you were very frank with me because you don't comment on leaked documents, but you say quite bluntly that this document is a scenario of doom and gloom.
It's a scenario challenge.
Well, I call it doom and gloom.
Well, I know, but I call it challenge.
So therefore, you then produce your government program, which you tell me has got great new technological innovations which are going to put us back to work over the next 10 years.
Absolutely. I think there are very exciting things happening in the workplace.
In the meantime, however, what are you going to do about the unemployed? Can we afford to pay $1 billion a year to those unemployed who quit their jobs?
Well, first of all, the unemployment situation, I think, has arisen through a lot of the structural changes, which you're familiar with because of having read a leaked document, for example. Changing patterns of supply and demand. Participation rates change. There are more women, which we're all glad to see coming into the workforce. There are all kinds of things happening in our society. Now, the issue is where the job's going to come from. That's the big question. There are two scenarios. There are people, I guess, like you and Leontiev who say, gee, we're going to have high unemployment way into the future. There are others like myself who say, I'm not really sure what the scenario is going to be, but I think that there are many things at the moment out there that suggest that we may create many, many more jobs than anyone suspects. We have to deal, though, with the people who go through the adjustment period, people that are in the workforce who may be threatened because of the new technology.
Who are threatened.
That's where our focus has to be now. Our second focus has to be on ensuring that young people in the school system have the necessary skills to take advantage of these new opportunities when they graduate. That's a problem. That's a big question.
All right, 25% of our 18 to 24s are unemployed right now. 25% of all the unemployed are between 18 and 24. That's roughly the figure. What the hell is anybody doing for them now?
Well, I can assure you that the department in Ottawa are concentrating on youth. John Roberts is making a major thrust in that direction. He's spoken about it in the House of Commons, acts where he's done it, and of course all the other programs are available to these people as well. There are enormous amounts being spent on training and re-equipping people with new skills. We're trying to put more money at the educational system. I mean, the fact is...
You're trying to put more money into the educational system, and no names, no pack drill, but a set man in British Columbia is slashing it to ribbons.
Well, I'm talking about, from our point of view, I'm looking at it really at the university level, trying to get the highly qualified manpower out there that we need in this country to take advantage of the opportunities that we're talking about. But I don't see the situation unfolding like you do at all. I see it as being a very optimistic scenario. We're going through a difficult transitional period, but I see a lot of opportunity out there.
I'll believe your vague generalities about innovative techniques and training and potentiality in
well, I'm prepared to put specifics. Let's look at
be specific.
In terms of what, specifically?
1,000 jobs that might happen next week because of technology, of which you are aware.
Well, I can see jobs happening all over the country because of technology in the areas where entrepreneurs get together. This is an entrepreneurial area that we're moving into. The jobs are going to be created, Jack, in the small and medium-sized companies. Companies where you have 100 employees. That's where the jobs are going to come from. They're not going to come from the great big old industrial sectors. They're going to come from the young entrepreneurs who are out there marrying up capital with technology and creating jobs. 328,000 net jobs have been created in the last year.
You're talking about new jobs.
New jobs.
You're not talking about these make work, UIC, exhaustive benefit jobs.
New jobs. There's going to be, I think, all kinds of exciting opportunities for Canadians in a wide range of areas.
Sure. A nation of small, innovative firms, less than 100, and helping small business, getting rid of big unions by happenstance, that would be useful, wouldn't it?
Well, unions have had an important role to play.
Have had?
Well, they're going through a transitional period, and they're making adjustments like everybody else.
Yeah.
You're not going to come here not a believer in the union movement.
No, I'm only a provocateur, sir. I don't express my opinions and questions. I merely try and get you to express your opinions. You're certainly glad to see, however, that the power of the big unions has been crimped by the economic squeeze.
I think that powers are subject to abuses occasionally. You know, I had responsibility, as you know, for the public service unions for a certain period of time, and I tried to establish a better balance in the negotiating process, but certainly not to eliminate the power except during the period of the restraint program.
There's a very interesting thing happening in British Columbia, and I can't possibly get you to comment on it, but we have a situation whereby our top man is determined to show to you people, you, with all your feather-bedded, extensive civil service and your vast expenses and all the rest of it, that you can cut the civil service arbitrarily and you can break union contracts by act of statute, which he has just done. Well, do you think that's a good technique?
Well, I'm not going to comment on the political situation in British Columbia, but it's not a technique that I think that we should use as a federal government. We have cut, in my own department, science and technology, I've cut it by 50%. But not arbitrarily. It's been cut by 50% to change the role, to make it more efficient, to add a chief scientific advisory capacity to that department. And the other people will be treated in accordance with the rules that govern displaced persons. They'll go on priority lists, and hopefully most of them will find other employment within the public service, and that's happening. But the point is, we can, I think, in a much more measured, humane way, deal with the size of the public service. I think arbitrary cuts are self-defeating. I think that you throw out the baby with the bathwater when you do that, and you create morale problems which are not going to give you the kind of public service that we require at in the federal government.
Well, I must compliment you on that answer. It's a good liberal answer. Certainly, says Donald Johnston, I've cut the size of science and technology and made it more efficient, and I've cut the number of people and the money by 50%. Is that correct?
Cut the people by 50%. I haven't looked at the budget yet to determine exactly what the fallout will be.
And these other 50 will be dealt with very humanely.
Well, we've taken elements and transferred them into
other departments?
NRC, Science Council, Industry, Trade and Commerce, where those functions that they're now discharging in our department can be more effectively done. It's in the interest of better government.
Rearrangement, but no cutting of the civil service numbers.
Well, there may be a marginal cutting of the civil service numbers, but the department's been reduced by as I say, by 50%.
How about guaranteed income schemes, which I believe that is in the back of the government's policy mind?
Guaranteed income schemes have been discussed for many, many years. I think it's something that has to be continually reviewed and looked at in the future. I think it requires a consensus nationally, which would have to be much broader than the one probably that exists today.
As things get worse, it'll be easier to get a consensus nationally on radical reductions in the work week, major reduction in the work year, education and sabbaticals where it can be afforded for improved education. As things get worse, that'll be the spur.
You say things get worse, Jack. We've come from 61 hours to a 40-hour work week in the last 100 years. Now, have things gotten worse?
No.
Well, then why would they get worse?
I'm talking about the economic situation.
Well, the reduction in the work week might very well be because of a new area in industrial production. There may be more leisure time. There may be more opportunities 25, 50 years from now for people to pursue more of their own interests. They may want to remain in the educational institutions longer. They may want to develop other skills, other hobbies. I mean, there are all kinds of things that are happening. That's why I say
I'm very impressed with you this morning. But you will concede that Canada is still a tail of the dog economically.
I don't see how you can look at a $350 billion economy, which is the 7th largest in the industrialized world, not counting the East Bloc, of course, and call it the tail of the dog. I think Canada has a very major role to play.
Oh yeah, but from the West Coast we have a different view. When the American economy goes down and the Japanese economy becomes tight on ores and they don't buy our lumber, wham!
Sure.
Down the tube we go.
We're dependent on world trade. We all are. BC in particular. BC has the largest dependence on external trade, and the lumber industry and forestry products in particular.
Maybe that's why we're less optimistic than you are, living in the one town in the country where there is no unemployment and everybody is prosperous.
I think that this recession has injected a note of realism across the country in terms of our dependency on external factors and on world trade. And sure, it's had a major impact in what was obviously historically regarded as one of the most, if not the most prosperous province, namely British Columbia. Yeah. But I think that there have been lessons learned in this for British Columbians and for Canadians generally, that we have to be more productive, that in the forestry sector we have to ensure that we have the latest technologies to be competitive out there, that we have to maintain a non-protectionist stance, the very issue that I raised with you. You remember when the Americans started talking about countervail on the forestry product, on the softwood of the United States, what impact that would have had on British Columbia, which we were successful through, I might say, the sterling efforts of Gerald Regan and others in our cabinet in averting. Now, I think...
And also the sterling efforts of some people in British Columbia.
Oh, yes, no question about it. But, I mean, that was a good cooperative effort, provincial, industry, and federal.
Then there's the question of these Japanese cars. Why don't we give ourselves some real protection, or can we not do it because of the balance of trade?
Well, there have been quotas negotiated, as you know, on a regular basis with respect to Japanese cars. I think that the car manufacturers in America are responding from what I read. And I have no inside knowledge of this, no leaked documents. I'm just telling you from what I see, the quality of the American automobile is improving. It's going to rise to a standard that will be competitive with the Japanese automobile.
You feel you're on the way. You feel that the most important function you have is science and technology.
No, I think the most important function I have is science and technology wrapped into economic development, because that's why I hold both portfolios. The two are absolutely inextricably linked today. Economic development, productivity is very much dependent upon technology.
Quite bright for the Liberal. Donald Johnston. Montreal, isn't it?
Yes.
Montreal. After the break. Easy. Well, Don, let's get down to some. Right, we'll take all your heavy stuff on the phone, and you can tell me about Canada tomorrow in due course. But in the meantime, you and Austin don't go on very well, do you? Austin's the social conscience of the cabinet, and you're the hawk on the right wing. Is that right?
Oh, I don't think so at all. Jack and I get on very well. Extremely well.
I'm not talking socially. Of course you get on well socially, but don't you have big differences with Jack?
I think intellectually we have each have points of view on different issues, obviously, as we do amongst cabinet members.
But isn't it dreadful? We've got to
you should be happy that it's not a monolithic group that sits around the table. I mean, the whole essence of the Liberal Party, as opposed to ideological parties, is that there's room for debate, exchange, you know, and that's how we come to...
May I dare do a Fotheringham and correct you?
Pardon me?
May I dare do a Fotheringham and correct you?
Absolutely.
The whole essence of the Liberal Party is survival at any cost. Look at the way you dumped Ray Perot in the cabinet. Dumped him for a bunch of unknowns as far as we're concerned from Toronto. It looks like you've decided we're going to hold the East and the hell with the West.
Well, first of all, the cabinet, the structuring of the cabinet is obviously the Prime Minister's prerogative.
No doubt about that.
Ray Perot was a very valued member of cabinet, a very valued colleague. There's no doubt about that. But it would certainly be a mistake to think that BC's interests are not well represented in cabinet.
We've only got one senator.
Well, but Jack not only is a senator, he's chairman of the Cabinet Committee on Social Development. He's also the minister responsible for the CDIC. He also sits on priorities in planning. He's a very energetic,
one of the most powerful influences in the country.
And, well, the point is that that BC, by the very presence of so many ministers, even this weekend in the province, obviously is very much on the minds of the cabinet. And if you look at the record of what's happened in BC, and the federal funding that's taken place in BC, from Canada Place to Northeast Coal over the last few years and everything in between, it's pretty hard for you to say that BC has not been very much recognized in terms of the participation in federal programs at the federal level.
I'll give you marks for Canada Harbour Place. I don't know about Northeast Coal, but at least you put a lot of money into it. And Mr. Bennett's saving you much money just now because he's slashing many programs of which you paid half cash up front. So you're saving money in BC because of what Bennett's doing.
If you're talking about such things as Canada Assistance Plan and payments of that kind, I haven't looked at the numbers, but that's certainly not our policy.
Anyway, but you get my point. You get my drift, you see. We've only got one non-elected person in the cabinet.
It's a very good point.
And that's shameful.
Yes, it is shameful. The next election, I think we should have a lot more elected people in the cabinet from BC, and I'm glad you make that point, because it's one that I'd like to underline since I have the opportunity of doing so.
Let me try another time. Forget there's anybody watching, Donald. You know, forget that you're a cabinet minister. I could quote you Fotheringham, but I won't. You're the natural governing party. That's what you're called, you see. And the Tories are a bunch of nits when it comes to continuing with a solid base and good leaders. But you tell me why you're down to a pathetic, feeble, humiliating, dreadful, defeatist 23 points in the polls. And all Mulroney's shown so far is that he's handsome, has a jaw, and is bilingual.
Well,
and you're down to... Why are you down to 23 points?
Well, Jack, first of all, we've come through the most difficult recession that the Western world has seen since the dirty 30s.
Right.
Well, we've been the government during that period. A lot of decisions have been taken during that period, which have been regarded as controversial, but necessary, in my judgment. The economy's on the way up. Polls show that Canadians have never been more optimistic in the last 8 years about their future than they are today. You realize that? These are recent polls.
I don't realize.
Entrepreneurial activity and polls indicate that people are excited, that there are many opportunities out there. It has not been associated at the moment with our government. We're in a trough, and there's no doubt about it. But whether it's 23% or 28%, which is what we're talking about during the last polls, doesn't really trouble me particularly. When the wave carries, it carries. Whether you have to overcome a 25% deficit or a 30% deficit or even a 15% deficit, once that wave begins, it will begin.
But who will your new leader be when the election comes in? When is it? 86, is it? 85?
The election would have to take place by the spring of 85. The last one was February.
Who will the new leader be?
Well, I don't know who the new leader will be. Maybe it'll be Pierre Elliott Trudeau. He hasn't said that he is not going to run again. Perhaps he did at one point, but I don't know who the leader is going to be.
Said that.
But, the point is this. Let's not worry about polls. Let's worry about elections. I can remember being out here not very long ago when everybody said that Mr. Bennett's government was finished, right in a trough. No way he was going to come back.
Right.
Need I remind you of what happened in the election? In Quebec, the Liberals under Claude Ryan won something like 13 by-elections in a row. The Péquistes were finished. I don't need to remind you what happened in the election.
And then now they're bringing back Bourassa.
Well,
it's incredible, isn't it?
I don't see that it's incredible.
Anyway.
He's worked for it, and the delegates, it looks like, are going to select him.
Yeah.
That's the democratic process.
My own personal feeling, and you obviously won't comment on this, is that regardless of the polls, if Trudeau finds an issue or feels a need, he'll stay, and that no one dare gainsay him. Wouldn't you agree with that?
I think that Trudeau is a man of great wisdom. I think he'll make a decision that's in the best interest of the party and the country.
And the Liberal Party is a principal decision, of course. You must retain power. You must retain power.
Jack, you know why the Liberal Party retains power? Do you know the answer to that?
You've got a hell of a good
liberal?
machine.
No, it's because small L Liberals represent the vast majority of Canadians.
Okay.
And if you've got a party in the middle of the spectrum, the Liberal Party should never be out of power, in fact.
Well, it's self-destructed everywhere else across the country. You haven't got one Liberal government in Canada.
The small L Liberals are still there. The small L Liberals are still here in BC.
Where?
It's our job now to create a wagon to which they want to associate themselves. And we have not been as successful.
You haven't got a leader in BC.
But the small L Liberals are still there.
An MLA. You haven't got an MP.
Where?
BC. Who have you? Liberals. None.
No, we don't have an MP in.
You're not a national party anymore.
Well, which party is a national party? Are the Conservatives a national party?
Well, they will be under
MP
Mulroney.
in the province of Quebec.
He'll
One
get
MP
70.
out of 75.
He got 50%
Are
of
the
the poll yesterday.
NDP a national
No.
party? Well,
No.
who's the national party?
I don't know.
If the Liberals aren't.
I wish we had one. Anyway, Donald, I want the listeners to get at you. This is Donald Johnston. Whether he likes to tell you or not, he is a potential candidate for the leadership in due course. You would never say, they never say anything publicly, these people, about this. Or if they do, they get in trouble with Pierre. He's here for the Liberal Conference this weekend, which is running a news competition with the Social Credit Conference, and you're out at Richmond, aren't you?
Yes, that's right, at the Delta.
And you wanted to say a word about Canada
Oh,
tomorrow.
yes, Jack, I thought you might like to come. When we're talking about science and technology, we're holding a national conference in Ottawa, November 6th to 9th, at which we're going to have international participation. The advisor to the President of the United States, Jay Keyworth, Jean-Jacques Savin-Schreiber, Japanese participation, workshops, representatives from industry, from labor, from the universities.
Are you paying all the fares for all these people?
Pardon me?
Are you paying all the fares?
Well, we're not paying all the fares. We're paying they're invited, so we're paying their subscriptions. But we'll pay the fares, in fact, for some who really can't come and who should be there. I mean, I think it's important that certain people definitely be present at this. And it's to deal with the kind of mythology that you seem to believe in with respect to what's going to happen in the future.
It's not mythology, it's lack of information.
Exactly. And that's what this is going to be. It's going to get rid of the myths. It's going to try and focus on reality. It's going to raise the issues. It's going to make more Canadians, I hope, aware of the problems of technology, which there are some, and the opportunities.
Okay, I'm going to try something, not nasty, but provocative. Try and make we want Don to go back informed about the feelings on the West Coast. He's a nice guy. He's a tax lawyer. How old are you?
47.
Gosh. Only 47? Tell him why you don't like the Liberals on the West Coast. Please, please. After the break. we don't have to impress a cabinet minister whose government is teetering on the edge of collapse. It's got to be. They can't come back from 23. Can you?
Easily.
So, and please, no good mornings, nice day, hello, how are you, or any of that garbage. Just go straight at him and I'll sit back and hopefully snicker. Go ahead to Don Johnston. Oh, big deal. Are you there? Well, for God's sake, speak up. Go ahead.
Minister Johnson,
Yes.
I have a suggestion with respect to the Prime Minister. One of the most preeminent bodies, or the most preeminent body in Canada today and in the future, will be the Supreme Court of Canada, and they will be dealing with constitutional and Charter of Rights questions, and I believe that the Prime Minister should be appointed as Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, replacing Boralaskin upon his retirement.
Thank you. Kind of irrelevant. Do you care to comment or not? It's a nonsensical point.
I have really no comment on it at all.
It's nonsensical. Go ahead, please.
Yes, Mr. Webster. I have two questions for Mr. Johnson. The first one is, if by the mid-1990s, and there are supposed to be, an estimated 2 million people out of work by the mid-1990s, are they going to build the facilities to hold half these people in prisons who might not get a job, who might have to resort to fraud or so forth to obtain some money or income?
Got the question?
Well, first of all, the number that you're using, sir, is really jobs that some people say may be lost. That doesn't mean there will be 2 million people out of work. I mentioned earlier that in the agricultural sector, employment went from 24% to 3%. I think it's 3, maybe 4, over the last 50 years. Well, those people moved into other occupations, largely in the city, largely in the manufacturing sector. Then in the last 20 years, there's been a rapid movement out of the manufacturing sector, and that trend is continuing. And I suggest to you that that trend is probably a good thing, because they're more interesting, more challenging jobs for people to have. So don't think of 2 million as being jobs that are lost. Think of them as jobs that are being changed with major structural changes in society.
Okay. As I was refreshing my memory on my own particular opinions, there are three main sources for new jobs in over the medium term. Large resource developments, technologically related goods and services, services to people. But even with a generous allowance for multiplier effects, it is difficult to see, say my advisors, these creating the $3 to $4 million new jobs that will be required.
Yes,
2 million to meet labour force growth, and 1 to 2 million to offset losses from structural change.
Yes, indeed. That's the point. Remember, I said I used the term difficult to see. I take you back 8 years to the issue of video games. Very difficult to see. In fact, nobody saw that that would become something like a $5 billion industry. So indeed, it is difficult to see, and that's why I don't think that anybody really has all the answers. I think if we did, we would all be multi-millionaires and do very well, as you know. But the point is, we have to look forward and use our best judgment as to where these opportunities are going to be, but they're going to be there.
Video games. Are we going to live by making bleeding video games?
I gave an example of video games. I'm not suggesting.
You know what I mean? It seems so trivial, doesn't it?
Well,
Such nonsense.
Well, there are many other applications as well. I'm just saying, did you know that video games, you've been in this business all those years, did you foresee that video games would become a $5 billion industry?
Never did I foresee either that pornography would become one of the great issues and dirty pictures one of the main retail outlets.
Well, there you are. You weren't able to
foresee
foresee the future in the past any more than you'll be able to see it in the future.
Dead right. Go ahead, please.
Good morning. One of the things I think is a continuing problem of the government creating problems, and then they set up a commission to study it. They end up lecturing us that we, the taxpayers, are at fault. And I'm thinking in particular the Fleming Commission. We've had a policy of expediency as far as immigration is concerned, no seemingly forward planning. And I would like to warn the government now that they're facing a real problem. The Chinese are, mainland China is making threatening gestures about Hong Kong. A lot of those people are looking to Canada. Are you planning on how you're going to handle it in the light that you're now trying to create and bribe people with job creation and whatnot, and then you're going to have a whole flood of more people coming in here when you can't handle what are already here now? These are...
Okay, I got your question. Here's a guy who's concerned about the family unification program, which brings in about 17 to 1. But that's for Axworthy.
Well,
isn't it?
You can obviously immigration policy is a sensitive area and a very important area. I mean, this country has been built by immigrants. We're all immigrants in Canada. The policies in the past have sustained us very well, and I hope we exercise good judgment in the future to ensure that we have a good, sound, liberal immigration policy that's in the best interest of the immigrants and of Canadians.
That's a perfect answer which said precisely nothing.
I thought it said a lot.
Perfect political answer, said precisely nothing. I threw in the needle, you see, which you didn't pick up. One immigrant on unification means 17. Well, 17 to 1. Yeah. This is what ordinary people are worried about. May I accept all your other theses in immigration?
Where did you get that number, by the way, Jack?
From a Canada Immigration Appeal Board document.
A leaked document?
Yes.
Never have confidence in leaked documents, Jack. I mean, I've just destroyed the one that you've got in front of you.
You admitted it exists, and you admitted it's doom and gloom, but you describe it as a challenge. Go ahead from Victoria.
Morning. Yeah, I have a couple of questions first. I'd like to know what percentage of Canadian workers work in the manufacturing heavy industry area, and there was a study done by Scientific American, and what impact would a 5% reduction in the work week in that area have? And second, you mentioned the book Megatrends, and it has a very important area about changing political trends in the nation in that book, and it was about elected senates with equal power for Canada, and more direct democratic process, referendum initiatives.
Okay, fair enough. That's a dull question.
Well, no, that's an important question, though. On the issue of manufacturing, I think in manufacturing generally, the workforce is about 20%. Some people see it falling to 10 in 10 to 15 years. Some people even think it may go further. You mentioned Scientific American. I think it was in September and October. September, they had of last year, they had an edition on the automation of the workplace with articles by Leontiev, who deals with that very issue and says, how does society start to match incomes with jobs when there are fewer jobs? How do we do this? This is a challenge that we have to look at. If that emerges as being the case, it may not. I don't think it will myself, and a lot of people take issue with Leontiev's analysis. But if his analysis is right, it's not a pessimistic scenario. We just have to make some structural changes in our own society.
Thank God I don't work for the CBC, you know, because if I worked for the CBC full-time, I couldn't have fun, you know. I'm trying to get people to give you hell, and they're letting me down badly this morning in British Columbia. They're asking you questions which are quite intelligent about the future. We'll try Nanaimo. Go ahead, please.
Hello, Jack?
Yeah.
Jack, my name is Dennis Barrington. I'm an alternative energy engineer. About a year and a half ago, I had a chance to have a talk with Don Johnston at the North Vancouver Chamber of Commerce. While he was there, he mentioned Megatrend at that time. But I also asked him a question about how come people were losing jobs, older fellows, about my age, 45 or 50 years of age.
Older.
And they had to go into their own business and become small business people. Now here it is a year and a half later, and the question I asked him at that time was, if he wants small business, if he wants to help small businesses, and a small businessman has to carry an account for 90 days to get his money and get to work, how come he has to pay taxes to the government upon the deal, not when the man gets the money? In other words, the guy is carrying the account for 90 days and has to shell out tax money right at the start.
Well, I guess, sir, you're talking about the accrual method of accounting, which businesses are taxed on. And, you know, that's been a raging debate for many years with professionals when they tried to move, you know, the department tried to move onto the accrual basis with lawyers, even to the point of saying, what's your time that you've booked but you've not yet charged for, which can create some serious liquidity problems. But, you know, I think that the Canadian Institute of Chartered Accountants would support, in the case of businesses, the accrual method of accounting. And there's two problems that you're talking about here. One is the tax, how the tax is collected, but the other is the fact that you've got accounts out on 90 days. And it seems to me that we should be looking at it from that point of view. Why 90 days? I mean, why not 30 days?
Because the people don't have the money in 30 days.
Then it backs up. Then you're saying it backs up through the whole system.
This man is complaining that he's got to pay taxes on monies not yet received due to one of the complexities of Revenue Canada.
Jack, that's not only the one, though. Up in Kelowna last year, I was involved with a council with Jack McEwen and Dwight Brown from the Economic Development Council, and they were asking about creating new jobs. And I said, what about old jobs, like in the energy field? So Dwight Brown took me aside. He said he wanted to talk to me. I went in and I spent a day and a half with the guy, and I explained about teaching people how to actually do energy feasibility studies, like not no garbage, but actual.
Right. Okay. And what's your point?
Well, after a day and a half, it was still a whole bunch of red tape, and nothing was ever done about it anyway.
Okay, I can understand these frustrations.
Well, look, we all get frustrated dealing with the bureaucracy. I mean, I've taught with the tax department most of my professional life, so, you know, I don't think I need to be told the difficulties.
Let me clarify that clearly. Most of your professional life is distinct from your political life.
Well, I mean,
you know what I'm getting at?
It's all, most of my professional life, including my
You've been a
political
tax
life.
advisor.
You can take it either way.
That's right. But you've never been in trouble.
What, with taxes?
Yeah.
I've had my assessments to fight too, certainly.
I'll drop that. I shouldn't have raised it in the first place. I can't find a Liberal hater in the place this morning. This is most depressing. We'll try another segment after the break. The Honourable Donald Johnston. Go ahead, please. Go ahead.
Gentlemen, Mr. Johnston.
Good morning, sir.
We have two senators in British Columbia from, or two appointees in BC here, right?
Well, you have more than two senators from BC.
Well, we only have two Liberals, I believe. Is that
No. Don't be silly. They're all Liberals.
Okay, yeah, I imagine so.
5 it is.
5. Well, we have no
Oh,
elected
just a minute.
representatives.
Hold on a second, please. Let's see if we can remember the names. There's Perot, of course, who was fired from the cabinet.
Yeah.
There's Austin, who's one of the most powerful men in the country, not elected. There's
George Van Roggen.
George Van who?
Roggen.
Is he still around as a senator? Of course he is. George Van Roggen. And then there's some woman in Vancouver Island we never hear about. What's her name?
Been here all my life, never heard of him.
No, a woman in Vancouver Island.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, but
And then
anyhow,
there's somebody
gentlemen,
else,
we have
too.
no elected representation in cabinet. So how can the Liberal government say that they know what our needs in BC here are when we have no say in the government business decisions? I believe we're too smart here. We're being punished for not electing any of your bagmen.
Well, sir, look, I'd be the first, as I said a moment ago, to hope that there would be Liberals elected from British Columbia. There always have been periods when national parties have been weak in certain sectors. When I came into to government, or when I came in as a member of Parliament in 1978 in a by-election, I think we had something like 10 members.
But that's said, with due deference, respect, and humility, he is saying to you, are we ignored on the West Coast because we haven't elected any Liberal bagmen?
Well, I don't understand how you can say that you're ignored on the West Coast. I mean, if you want me to get out my list of projects, I mean, when you say being ignored, I mean, what do you mean by being ignored? I mean, you've got a very powerful voice in the cabinet in Jack Austin. And as I said, he's chairman of the Social Development Committee, which is the largest single financial envelope in the government.
That's right. Your answer to him is no.
Well, the answer is that his perception is not the reality.
Go ahead, please.
Good morning,
Good morning.
Minister.
Good morning, sir.
Welcome to British Columbia.
Well, thank you.
I have 3 quick questions I'll put to you, and then I'd like your response. I noticed the other day on the parliamentary session that a Liberal backbencher proposed a motion in the at the start of the session on Wednesday, asking the Speaker that payments made to Medicare programs in provinces where they charge a fee, such as British Columbia and Alberta, that these payments be withheld on behalf of the federal people involved. In other words,
we've got that question. What's your next one?
the second one was I wanted to know what about the funds for education, that is university grants, and the student aid programs that have been allocated to this province and are being diverted by this particular government that's in power now.
Into general revenue.
Full page story in this morning by the president of UBC about this very item.
Correct.
And the thing is, what I'm really saying to you, Mr. Minister, and the third one is concerns my rights as a Canadian citizen. That is a Canadian from sea to sea, not just to this little wee backwater state that I happen to live in at the moment. You know, I believe my rights as a Canadian are going down the drain, and I have no redress in this province. What I'm saying to you, that I think your fortunes of you and your party would be substantially enhanced if at the start you took a stand and say, look, these people in these kind of provinces cannot push Canadians around. They cannot shove them into the dirt any more than they are already doing. In other words, if they are giving grants to universities and they're cutting back, and I have 2 kids in school, and I believe they have a moral right and an obligation to put that money into the educational system.
Okay, your point is well made. This man is saying to you quite succinctly that where federal monies are aimed at projects, you should force them to put them into those projects and not into grants, and that, for instance, Monique Bejan should get your cabinet approval to hold back on payments to BC and Medicare because of the use of fees. You can't, can you answer that at all?
We surely, people recognize that we as a federal government, the Liberals have brought in Medicare, are dedicated to maintaining the integrity of the Medicare system. It's been one of the great interventionist moves. You know, Jack, you accuse me of being an anti-interventionist. On the social issues, I'm very much an interventionist. I think that Medicare has been a shining example of good government intervention in the areas where Liberals historically have had the capacity to recognize and to come through with solutions to problems. It would be a tragedy if provincial administrations are able, through their own activities, whether it be user fees or whatever, or extra billings, in a manner that would undermine that system. That's Monique's concern. That's the concern of the federal government. Post-secondary education, the same thing. Until we started to talk about putting limits on the amount of transfers, most Canadians, including myself, didn't realize the extent to which we were financing university education in the system. I mean, I knew we were doing it, but the actual numbers, to think that 57% nationally, and in some cases 100% in some of the provinces, of education at the university level is financed by federal taxpayers' dollars.
Well, what you did this year was you increased student aid and the social credit cut it.
Well, that is always going to be, Jack, that's always going to be the nature of federal-provincial problems. What we have to do is sit down together and rationally and try and ensure that the programs that we wish to deliver are compatible with the province wants to do, so that we can have some synergism between the two levels of government instead of this dog-eat-dog attitude which so often prevails.
Give me the meaning of that word. I honestly don't know it.
The what?
The meaning of that word.
Synergism?
Synergism.
That means the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. That's a quick definition off the top of the head. I wouldn't like you to check that in Oxford.
All right, I've got a little contest I'm going to run now. You don't mind a little promotional contest. I'm going to give how many senators have we got in BC?
Am I stuck with this contest?
No, you're not stuck.
Well, then
with
why don't you ask the question to the
A free Webster mug to the first person who phones through the switchboard and gets through to the program, 420-2288, and gives me the name of all five, or anybody who's on the line, gives me the name of all the BC senators.
That's the first prize, and the second prize is 2 Webster mugs.
I'll take a break. I'm laughing. Please don't call the switchboard. I'm in real trouble. I gave the switchboard number by accident. Please don't call the switchboard. You got to get through. Oh, there's
Webster.
Yes, go ahead, please.
Good morning. What I was wondering if...
Have you got the names of the senators?
Sorry?
Oh. He phoned the wrong station and the wrong program, obviously. We don't have callers like that. Go ahead, please. I'll accept it.
Okay. Hello.
Where are you speaking from?
Kitimat.
Have you got the names of the BC senators?
No.
Oh, dear. Hold on. Go ahead, please. Hello. Things are going to hell in a handbasket this morning. Let me do it this way.
Do I get a chance to compete?
No, you don't. You've had time to refresh your memory. Hello there. Do you know the names of the BC senators? Hold on. Do you know them? Hold on. Do you know them? Hold on. Do you know the names of the senators? Do you? Do you know the names of the senators? You're no help. Bye. Do you know the names of the senators? No. How about you? Oh, no, you're wrong. Do you? Okay, call me back. I'll give you one. You can give one step. You gave 3, didn't you?
Let me give you 2 more?
No. You gave 3.
Yes.
Austin, Perot, and Van Roggen.
Yes.
Now you know the other 2. No, you've not to do it.
Not to do it?
We'll take calls, and if somebody comes up with it, line 4. What are the names of the senators?
Jack Austin.
1. Who else?
That's the only one, isn't it?
You're useless. How about you? Do you know the names of the senators?
Do I know the names of the senators?
From BC?
No idea.
Thank you.
Do you know all 5?
Do you know the names of the senators? Hello? Come on, bright head. Do you know the names of the senators? Hold on. Okay, tell me.
Hello?
What are they? What are the names?
Austin, Perot, Nancy Heath, George Van Roggen, Ed Lawson, and a vacancy.
You're wrong.
Nancy
Not wrong.
Yes, you are. Nancy who?
Nancy Heath.
No.
Oh, she married somebody else.
Yeah, what?
He was Nancy Heath when he was appointed.
Okay, you win.
All right, Jack, you can drop the bucket at the house on your way home and I'll give you a drink.
Thank you very much indeed. I know the voice. The name is Nancy Bell. Is that correct?
Nancy Bell.
Nancy Bell.
Good for him.
That's the first time I've had a laugh with a Liberal in 1,000 years. How much time we got to go in this segment? 4 minutes. Okay, back to serious calls, Don. You see, there's one thing you can't replace with all your damn technology and your microchips. Do you know what that is?
What's that?
Me.
Well, Jack, it's technology that's made you.
But me.
Well, wait till we have artificial intelligence. That's 1995.
Go ahead, please. Go ahead, speak up.
Yeah, hey, Guy William is a senator.
Was a senator.
Guy William.
Guy has retired. There is a vacancy and the Liberals can't make up their mind who to appoint. Guy retired as a senator. Go ahead, please.
Mr. Johnson.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Trudeau, from the time he was elected until, just a few years ago, I always spoke of his I Have a Dream speeches, and they were usually about the North. And I took a training course to, provide me with a position in the North, and nothing's happening with the exception of BC Coal, the Northeast Coal. And I just want to know what the Liberals are planning to do to open up the North and make it easier for people to live in the North.
Well, when you say that Prime Minister Trudeau had a dream, it was mostly about the North. I think it was really more about Canada. It was more about the relationships between the different groups in Canada, particularly the French Canadians and the English Canadians, as expressed through the official languages policy and otherwise. But the North has always been a preoccupation also of the Prime Ministers and of the government. And there have been major financial endeavors in the North. There have been in the past policies, on the tax side to attract people into the North, to keep them into the North. And of course, with the emergence of hydrocarbon exploration in the Beaufort Sea and so on, and the Alaska gas pipeline and Norman Wells development and so on, there's a lot of potential activity in northern Canada. But I'm not to say that there are not major challenges. It's a very hostile climate. There are major issues in terms of land claim settlements that have to be dealt with and so on. But don't think for a moment that the dream, I suppose that was one of John Diefenbaker's lines, as I recall, back in 1957. That dream has always been one of most Canadians, including
You remind me of
Prime
two
Minister.
phrases. Diefenbaker's dream was interpreted as building roads from igloo to igloo.
But wasn't that his actual statement? I have a dream.
I think I have a dream
Wasn't
of
that
building roads from igloo to igloo, or what's that effect? And then your latest dream is the world is unfolding as it should. You know that. That's his most famous statement. This land is our land. The world is unfolding as it should.
The land is strong.
That's it. The land is strong. The land is a lot stronger than the economy, isn't it? And just by the way, Carney, my favorite Tory MP on the West Coast here, says that your PIP program is 80, is it billion or million? Million. For oil exploration?
The PIP program, yes.
Is that 80 million?
Well, I can't remember that. You see, it depends upon, it's a matching program, it's a grant program, so you can't you can only make estimates.
I was headed for small Canadian exploration companies, but the big boys are forming phony companies and ripping it off.
Oh, is that Pat's view?
That's Pat's view.
Well, Pat has a lot of views.
Just thought I'd let you know,
right.
In passing. Go ahead, please. Go ahead, please.
Yes, Jack.
Yes.
I'd like to speak to Minister Johnston, please.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Mr. Johnston, I've been in Canada since 1968 when I emigrated from England and became a Canadian citizen. Since that time, I've lived under the Trudeau regime, and seen the country going downhill faster than I've seen my own country go down. A retort that the Prime Minister made yesterday based on the poll that was taken, his retort was, I couldn't care less, and you are telling us that we should get behind a person like this and support his party. At one time he said he wanted to be known as the most famous Prime Minister in all time. I would suggest to you that he will go down in the annals of history as the infamous Prime Minister of Canada. Thank you very much.
Well, Jack, now you're getting the kind of questions that you invited to be put to me. I would take issue with this gentleman very much in where Canada's gone since 1968. At the 1979-80 elections, you may recall, we published a document called the OECD, or Western Country Olympics. And in nearly every category, Canada is way out in front of most other countries, certainly in the area of job creation, which is the preoccupation of everybody today. Canada.
What he's mad about was Trudeau's attitude yesterday. He was in one of his arrogant moods. I couldn't care less. Who cares?
I don't know. I wasn't in Ottawa yesterday, or I was, but I didn't see that comment. I don't even know what it was. This was about, what, the polls?
Somebody said you're 23% in the polls. He says, I couldn't care less.
Well, that's hearsay evidence. I didn't hear it.
It doesn't really matter. But this is one of the reasons we hate you.
Who hates us?
We in the West Coast hate you.
Well, I wasn't under the impression that we were hated on the West Coast.
Yeah, you're down the tube.
Pardon me?
You're down the tube.
Well, let's wait until the election.
I mean, this guy Mulroney is bilingual, he is charming, he's handsome, he's doing very well on his feet in the House of Commons. And that exchange on the 007, that plane that was shot down accidentally, according to the Prime Minister, PM made his points about the need for talk, even though the Soviet Union won't accept the note. But Mulroney kept his head and he made his political points.
Well, Jack, I take issue with you completely. I think that the Prime Minister has said on the Soviet issue is common sense. I've always thought of you as being a man of common sense.
Yeah, but he changed his position.
We have to cohabit with the Soviet Union, perhaps for many generations. And surely to goodness, it's about time people start saying, how do we accommodate that relationship? And
yeah, but why didn't he tell McGuigan that before? Who's the External Affairs Minister now? McEachen. Why didn't he tell McEachen that? McEachen condemned this atrocious act of murder or something.
Well, I think that.
And then the PM says it's an accident.
But I think that initial condemnation on the basis of what was known at the time was not inappropriate. The point is, let's put that in the greater global context of how we deal with the Soviet Union. And it's not going to be through saber rattling and threats and screaming and megaphones and breaking off contacts and further isolation.
We certainly have,
in my judgment.
The only saber we've got to rattle is to let the Yankees carry on with the agreement to test the cruise. Right? That's our only saber.
Well, that's no. That's not, we're not talking about. You know, I said saber rattling is not the issue here. I mean, surely, Jack. We're talking about a whole bunch of issues this morning. But is there any issue more important? Any issue more important than the de-escalation of the arms race and the elimination of the nuclear threat?
Certainly is not.
None. All right. Well, then we have agreement.
None more
so the issue is we're agreed on an objective, and I'd like to hear from you as to how you think that can be achieved.
I'll give you the perfect solution. Prime Minister Trudeau should leave his job and become Secretary General of the United Nations. Perfect man for the perfect job. We'd get rid of him, they'd be happy with him, you'd be happy that the world was going to de-escalate. Not a bad idea.
Well, if you're saying that the Prime Minister has an important role to play on the international stage, I agree with you. That much I agree with. How it should be played and from what position is another issue. We can debate that.
Excellent answer. Any political science students watching should have taped this program this morning and seen the perfect way to answer questions. Forthrightly, without giving too much of an inch. That answer on Trudeau was great. I said, fire him from Prime Minister and make him Secretary General. And you're saying, after a moment's cogitation, if you're saying that the Prime Minister can play a major role in de-escalating world problems, that's something else again, and I agree with you on that. Donald Johnston, good fun this morning.
Yes.
Quite enjoyable. The listeners were far too kind to you, in my opinion. Back off you go out to here's the once proud Liberal Party out in Richmond, and the Social Credit downtown in the fancy big hotel. How times have changed in British Columbia. My thanks to Donald Johnston. Give my regards to the Prime Minister, would you please?
I shall indeed.
The local PM isn't talking to me, but I think Pierre might if he thinks he can make a date with
I hope to get him on the show in the near future.
It's a nightmare. I wish I could be as casual with him as I am with you. Thanks, Don Johnson, Minister of Science, Technology, Economic Development, and Perfect Political Answers. And I'll be back after the break. I've been stacking up letters on my desk, and I insist on giving you some of the viewer mail. All of it is favourable, of course. And the first letter will be coming up now. You have allowed yourself to become infected with wee Davy's petulance. Look up, man. Beyond the trees at which you cavil, there is a forest. Next one. Next one. We enjoy watching your show and thought it necessary to write to comment on your excellent speech on the provincial government blocking off and keeping out all news media from certain corridors of Parliament. We hope Bill Bennett was watching Lindsay MacDonald. Next one. Next one. Takes 5 seconds. We've seen that one before. Thank you for your outspoken opinion on our government's decision to disallow reporters and camera crews in the corridors of the Parliament building. It's time someone of your calibre spoke out to the public and reminded them that politics needs to be moved out of the playground back to a situation of integrity and honesty. It appears this government does not feel it is accountable to anyone. Susan Irvin. Next one is anti-civil servant one. And it says, and it's a very good letter as a matter of fact, the 60-year-old company I worked for went bankrupt and 200 people were out of work overnight. No notice, no severance pay, no sympathy, no solidarity, no protests no sympathy from civil servants. We faded quietly into the unemployed. Don't ask me to feel sorry for government employees. Next one is about the process of democracy. Thank goodness there is someone who can hear my feelings and no doubt the feelings of thousands of other British Columbians regarding the activities of the Social Credit government. The behaviour of our elected members is utterly disgusting. No wonder they don't want the public to know what goes on behind these secret doors. Very good. Nice little sharp little says. Next one. Just keep rolling them. That's me. We're like a wild hippopotamus. Screaming, shouting and yelling because someone took away your colleagues' toys. It's about time those media people were put in their place. They have to abide by the rules. They have rules to abide by, so let them abide by those rules like everyone else has to. That's me, the hippopotamus. Well, I know I'm no beauty, but I'm more than just a pretty face. Is that not correct? Yes? Next one. The Speaker has violated the tradition of non-partisanship that traditionally goes with that position by his rollover performance in limiting where and when the media can ask questions. All this government needs is a press spokesman like they use in Washington, D.C. And what do you know, a nice letter at the end. Grace liked the program too, so boo. Your program on Cradlehaven was done with great concern and sensitivity. The months of controversy caused great anguish to those of us closely associated with these children. I feel your program clarified the situation to the public. You see, little Terry, who was seen several times in the film, is my much beloved great-grandson and living here in Maple Ridge. Thank you, Helen. I'll be back, free for all after the break. Ah, well, I'm just going to cut the phones. Friday morning, after all, you know. It's supposed to have... Hey, listen. What about behind the scenes with Webster? Oh, we'll do it another day. Go ahead, please.
Hello, Jack. I'd like to say that I support the Liberals, and I think the only place that they've really fallen down is not being tougher and in controlling the politicians, the provincial politicians, like Bennett and Lougheed and Levesque all the way down the line. I think they handle them with kid gloves, and I think if they clobbered them, there'd be more cooperation, and perhaps policies would come through, and we'd see more results.
Thank you. Go ahead, please.
Yes, the inimitable Howard Cosell of the West Coast with his style and dissecting and interviewer of the greatest. A little fun.
I don't think, you never know how these guys are going to take that kind of thing. Not that I care how they take it, you know.
Well, the fact I thought it was a compliment paid to you. Anyways, a little fun. The Operation Solidarity had this advert on radio in regards to these Pastor Niemöller. They came for the Jews, I did nothing. They came for the Catholics, I did nothing. And I've just done something else with it. They came for the carpenter, I did nothing. They came for the plumber, I did nothing. They came for the electrician, I did nothing. They came for the roofer, I did nothing. Now I can't fix my bloody house. Have a nice weekend.
Go ahead, please. It's really my staff is baffled by that call. It was really quite a good call. Go ahead, please.
Hello, Jack.
Hello there.
Oh, good morning.
Morning.
Go out for another 5 days of interesting mornings. But what I'd like to ask you is where you got the idea that Pierre Trudeau is grooming himself for the Secretary Generalship of the United Nations, which, I tell you, I've been saying that for a couple of years now. No one agrees with me. I'm glad they finally heard it from somebody with some clout.
There was a fairly authoritative report that a tentative move was made and he was blocked.
Oh, I can't see it. You know,
The blockage must have come from the West.
I think the man would be great for that job.
Or maybe I'm thinking about Lester Pearson. Can't remember, but obviously it's the perfect solution for Pierre.
That'll get him out of Canadian politics.
Yeah, that's why it's a perfect solution. You would agree. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, good morning, Jack. Tell me, they interviewed Bennett on the television the other day, and the reporter asked him, if he was to hold another election in British Columbia right now, he said he would get 45 seats. I'll hang up the phone and just listen to your opinion on that.
Thank God I didn't see the interview. It would have made me up, Chuck. That's my only comment on it. I don't know where I was or who did it, and I couldn't care less. See? Boo. I'm going to peek. I'm mean. Go ahead, please. Go ahead, please.
Hello.
Hello.
Say, Jack.
Yeah.
This morning when you were talking to your guest there, and all he's doing wants to do is pump more money into education.
That's right.
Is he not aware of the fact that it's our educational system that caused a lot of our problems today? They're turning out people with degrees, and they wind up being bus drivers. And in addition to that, the stupid jerks, all they want to do is a grant from the taxpayer.
You're right. Furthermore, they wind up as bus drivers with itchy bottoms.
Yeah.
Yeah. Pilling on their trousers. Don't they wear shorts, these bus drivers? Couldn't understand that one at all. To be clinical about the whole dispute. Honestly, I've only been drinking coffee this morning. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, Jack.
Morning.
A slightly different subject. I've had 3 encounters with trucks, one of them, hauling a pup truck. My point is that no one is ensuring that these trucks carrying gravel are covered with a cover. I've had my windshield broken, I've had a headlamp, and I've had my windshield chipped. And this on the main highway. Now, I lived back east.
Okay, hold on. As a man from Belfast of sound sense of responsibility, all you got to do is back away from the trucks. Don't travel behind them. Is that not a good common sense answer? You argue with me, Freddie, and you'll be in trouble. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, Jack.
Morning.
You asked earlier about wanting somebody mad at the Liberals.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think ever, you've been around a long time, that you ever seen a jury coming in with a verdict that didn't feel a little sorry for someone they were sending to the hangman.
Right, true enough, but they're going to the hangman.
Right.
No doubt about it. I've done 8. Where's that? Oh, Clinton. Good morning in Clinton. Good morning in Clinton.
Beg pardon? Hello, Mr. Webster.
Oh, good. It's 25 after 10. Will you try and waken up in Clinton?
I'm sorry. Could you tell me why small businesses have to balance their books for fear of going broke, and yet governments can always go broke every year and survive? I thought these people were all really intelligent. That's why they got elected, and yet they can't run a business.
The federal government prints more money. The provincial government was borrowing money, and now they've decided, the provincial government, to balance the books. The businessman goes bankrupt. That's fair. Go ahead, please.
Jack.
Yes.
I see where Bennett is very popular in Toronto.
Trudeau was very popular in China. I've got a beautiful one-way ticket for both of them. What do you think about Harvey Overfeld, the way that our premier said that he wouldn't be allowed into the meeting? And Jack, if it wasn't for guys like you and Harvey Overfeld, maybe we wouldn't even know what the hell's going on around here.
We don't know what the hell's going on around here right now.
Well, thank goodness there are some people like you around, Jack.
Old nags. Well, we do our best to nag. Harvey, Clem, Webster, and all the other reporters on BCTV. What day is this? Oh, it's Friday. See you Monday, 9 a.m. precisely. No, after the break, One of Bennett's problems is the hospital workers, essential services. Jack Giroux of the Hospital Employees Union will lay it down from his point of view Monday morning. Hey, new book out in Bennett. I don't know the guy who wrote it, Mitchell, but this is in WAC. There are a couple of things about WAC I want to ask him particularly. And a chap from the Canadian Drug Manufacturers Association, they're pretty angry, I think, at what the federal government has done to protect the big drug companies. Should be good, Monday, 9 a.m. precisely. She comes. What are you doing?
I'm taking my mint out of my mouth so that I don't, swallow it live on your show.
Did you come on this program with a mint in your mouth?
Yes, definitely. It's to try and quit smoking.
Are you succeeding?
Well, I has one of yours, so I suppose. No.
God.
You go ahead. If you want to kill yourself on air, go ahead. That's just fine. I will just stay with my mint.
Duncan Day. Money for old rope, which in Arabic is Fulus Alashan Habal Gadim and means absolutely nothing.
Okay, I'm Carney. It's, what am I supposed to say after that? Okay, I'm Carney. It's 10:18 precisely, and my guest today is Jack Webster. You can ask him anything you want, except about energy policy, but keep it short and stupid.